day, fellow viewer, and welcome back to a new episode of Hammer D20, the show that has far too much knowledge of the operation and know-how of a trebuchet, also knowing that it has no practical life usage. My name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today, we're going to head down to the Binbrook Conservation Area to check out the Murder Melee in the Meadows, hosted by the Barony of Ben Dunforth of the Society of Creative Anachronism, which I spoke about last episode and in previous episodes. However, before we head down, I want to take a quick minute to talk about a new film I just recently watched, Blackberry. See, there are a couple nerd culture films that have come out in recent time, those being Spider-Man Across the Multiverse, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, The Little Mermaid, and Flash, not to mention that I haven't talked about Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yet. That all being said, I really don't care about superhero films anymore, really. It's one of those things that, kind of once Avengers Endgame happened, it was kind of like, yeah, okay, they're all kind of done. And I kind of don't really care to watch any of them. I watched a couple of them, and they've all been fine. They're all trying to be something more than they are. I just don't care for them. And even the ones that are good, like I've heard Spider-Man Across the Multiverse, you could probably find 100 reviews about that film, about how good it is. It sounds like it's good. It sounds like people like it. So what's my opinion going to add to the great conversation? And I generally refuse to watch and pay Disney any more money to watch any of their filthy live-action remakes. All the soulless cash grabs that are just meant to siphon your nostalgia into a fine financial powder so they can snort it up. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I think none of you should. If my episode-long review of Cruella, then you'd know what I'm talking about. But I figure a film like Blackberry, it's a bit of an indie film that is also, or was, being screened at the Westdale Theater, would be a perfect fit for this kind of thing for the time being. So, without further ado, let's go into what the Blackberry film was all about. So, the Blackberry film was directed by Matt Johnson, a local Canadian indie director famous for not really much. He directed The Dirties, a found-footage thriller, Operation Avalanche, a found-footage conspiracy thriller, and Nirvana, the band The Show, a mockumentary parody comedy series. As you can tell, a lot of his filmmaking process comes from the handheld, documentary, kind of The Office-style filmmaking, with a lot of camera sway and candid filmography, working almost like nonfiction, which Blackberry basically was. The film stars Jay Baruchel as Research in Motion co-founder and co-CEO Mike Lazaridis, Glenn Howerton as RIM co-CEO Jim Balsley, and Matt Johnson himself as RIM co-founder Doug Freegan. The film basically goes through RIM's history as a failing startup company in 1996, to Balsley's introduction and purchase of the company, to the height of their success in 2003, and the beginning of their failure in 2008 with the introduction of the iPhone. One thing this film should get credit for is the acting. Everyone acts fantastically. All the characters felt extremely real, convincing you that this is exactly how these people were and acted in real life. As far as I can tell, none of it was fabricated, save for maybe some dialogue said. As far as I remember, Jim Balsley was this aggressive, kind of high-flying, big-money businessman that kind of made big promises and then delivered later. As many Hamiltonians will know, he was the head of the trying to get a NHL team to Hamilton. First, initially trying to purchase the Pittsburgh Penguins and moving them to Hamilton, and then purchasing the Nashville Predators and then moving them to Hamilton. Which might have been one fact they got wrong. In the film, they said he was looking to buy the Penguins in 2007 and was rejected because he offered season tickets before the team was purchased, which was the case for when he wanted to buy the Nashville Predators instead. In reality, it's a minor detail. Overall, the film was decently funny, but not a roll-on-the-floor laughing kind of movie. Much of the comedy comes from the engineering side of things, not understanding how the business side works, and vice versa. One side being the nerdy technical side that's also obsessed with video games and arguing on forums about the semantics of Star Trek lore, with the business side trying to get this company to run efficiently and like a machine without understanding that their success came from these nerdy guys and their neurotic way of doing things. It did a good job of reoccurring themes and splicing them throughout the film. At first, Jim Balsley needed the engineering team to make a prototype of their idea and needed it done in a day. But Mike Lazardis made it clear that it'd be near impossible, since he wouldn't compromise on his work, making sure everything he made was perfect, which Jim argued perfect is the enemy of good, which then Mike counter-argued that good enough is the enemy of humanity. This was mostly in response to how most of the tech in the 90s was made in China, and how most of it hardly worked. This film initially represented it with these cheap intercoms that were made in China that had these hissing sounds, which Mike neurotically fixed. It was a stance that RIM and Blackberry stood by for a long time, making it apparent that their success came from their higher quality products made in North America. However, near the end of the film, when they're working on a new prototype of the Blackberry Bold, they're rushing to get the prototype done, with engineers throwing around the term, "Is it good enough? Yeah, it's good enough." And when Mike needs to figure out a way to make their new BlackBerry Storm to counteract the iPhone, he then gets it manufactured in China, which leads to the company's first major failure, with Mike manually trying to fix the hissing sound those phones had, coming full circle. Probably the most notable criticism I have for the film is the camera shake. Imagine an episode of The Office, and imagine that amount of movement and this and that times 2. The camera moves a lot in this film, and I am somewhat susceptible to vertigo and camera motion and stuff like that. So at some points, I kind of had to look away because I was getting a little motion sick. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad throughout the whole film, and there wasn't too much movement, but it certainly could have been reduced. Maybe they added more of it to make the film seem more interesting, or maybe that's just how it was filmed. Either way, it certainly makes the film seem like an indie film. Aside from that, I can't really think of much else to complain about. The film covered a lot in its 2-hour runtime, and it, despite its dry material, kept my attention for the whole entirety of that. Beyond the camera shake, I'd probably say the film's a 7 out of 10, or more so. The 7 out of 10, maybe it would be like an 8 out of 10 if the camera shake wasn't there. It still wasn't like the most interesting subject matter, but it certainly made something like running a tech business, like BlackBerry, kind of into an interesting thing, with kind of some of the high-flying kind of salesmanship that Jim Balsley did with, the way how the dichotomy of the engineering with the sales guys and how they worked and clashed and whatnot. It was good. I would recommend watching it. Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a short break. See you soon. Welcome back. So, with that out of the way, let's head down to the Binbrook Conservation Area and check out what is the murder melee in the meadows.
Your guard! Leon!
Welcome to Murder Melee in the Meadows 2023. It's a yearly event where local Ontario Society for Creative Anachronism members meet to camp out, fight, drink, and have a good time. As I've mentioned before, the SCA is an immersive history society that recreates medieval life through activity. Unlike reenactors, the SCA physically fight against each other with weapons they've made while wearing armor they've created. All their clothing is handmade, as are all their crafts. The SCA in Ontario is called the Kingdom of Eoldamere, and the Hamilton chapter is called the Barony of Ben Dunferth. While Eoldamere's main colors are white and red, Ben Dunferth's are primarily black and gold, as seen in many of their warriors' colors. The society welcomes all people of all ages and groups, and is particularly open to anyone's amount of participation and interest, as long as you're welcoming and open to others. Everywhere I looked, people were all getting along and laughing about something or other, and were very welcoming to me as I wandered around the campgrounds videotaping them in their medieval garb. I spoke to Robin McConnell, or Fisher, of Ben Dunferth, the web minister of Ben Dunferth, about what you can do here, as well as their own personal experiences being a part of the SCA.
So this is Murder Melee, or Murder Melee, depending on how you like to say it.
Yeah.
And this is Ben Dunferth's camping event. So we have this once a year. It runs from Thursday to the Sunday. Yeah. And yeah, so we all get together and camp for a weekend, and we have lots of different activities. So Saturday we'll have a huge rapier battle in the morning, a huge heavy fighting battle. All throughout we have archery happening down at the archery range there. We also have thrown weapons, lots of art and science activities. We have someone actually doing a rock carving class. So yeah, lots of stuff to do.
Fantastic. Yourself, how long have you been in the SCA?
It has been since, I'm gonna say just pre-COVID, so about since 2019 now.
Nice.
So I'm still relatively new in SCA terms.
Oh, fair. How has it been? How do you like it?
I love it. It's great. It is just, it's like going and camping with all of your best friends. So yeah, it's wonderful. It's just a super welcoming group. And it is, if you are someone who likes hobbies, it is a hobby of hobbies. So it is very dangerous, but you enjoy every moment of it. So I'm actually primarily a heavy fighter, more than anything. I've been doing that about 3 years now.
Okay.
And that's super fun. That's how I actually got into the SCA.
Yeah.
And I also do a little bit of sewing. This is actually something that I sewed.
Oh.
Didn't do any sewing before the SCA, so hobbies. You learn because you see something that's super cool, but nobody sells it, so you got to learn how to make it.
Sick. It's a really nice dress.
Oh, thank you.
Each SCA member makes their own name with its own significance, creating a persona of themselves within the society. You can earn titles and honors within the society, and even earn the role of king if you are the victor in a one-on-one heavy combat tournament. I spoke to Jeff Frank, or Sir Menek mit der Barden, about first his name and its significance, and what he loves about the SCA. He is a knight in the organization, as well as a heavy combat fighter who participated in the murder melee.
My SCA name is Menek mit der Barden, which means Manik with the polearm. I joined when I was 19, so I joined 18 years ago.
Oh, how is it?
I love it. Yeah, it's all-consuming. My focus is fighting, so with the polearm kind of gives that away.
Yeah.
I'm a knight in the SCA, and I got that by my prowess in fighting. My favorite ones are the big battles.
Yeah.
So the big ones locally in Ontario, this is the big one for the melees.
Yeah.
This is a 10-man tournament. And also I really like the big battles down in Pennsylvania, where we have big battles of like an 800 on 800. So our team tends to be fairly mobile, and I'm on one of the wings, usually the right wing. And so I bring a big 7.5 foot polearm, and I'm running around, and basically if you let me, I'll poke you in the face, or I'll smash you down on top of your head. I mean, I was always enjoying medieval. I always had medieval Legos when I was a kid and stuff. And it was actually at university that I found it, and they had a helmet on a table. I was like, what is this? And they're like, well, you just missed the fighting. And so I was bored one summer after school, and I came out, and they put me right in an armor, and we were hitting each other a little bit, and the person had to stop me and be like, I think you're gonna be doing this a long time. When I hit you on the head, you had a big smile on your face.
Oh, that's sick.
So it's a stress reliever. It's a great workout, and I just love it. I really enjoy the night culture as well. It's really great to go out and do the battles, and then it's really nice to go and hang out with your friends around a campfire, and you have war drums going, and it's really great.
The murder melee itself, as you can see, is a 10-person battle where two opposing sides fight against each other, killing one another until they're the last one standing. You're killed whenever you're hit in the head or the chest with a weapon. If your arms are hit, you can't use that arm until you die, and you can't hit below the belt. Fighters craft weapons made from rattan poles, a bamboo-like wooden material that is flexible and durable, but swings lightly and doesn't hurt that much. Their purpose is to make you feel like someone's hitting you without causing long-term pain. You can craft your weapon to be any kind of medieval-style weapon, from axes to swords, to spears, to mauls. Most people tend to craft their weapon to be a long sword, but there are many different varieties you can use. Jeff, for example, crafted his weapon to be like a polearm, which has a range advantage over a longsword, so long as they don't get too close to you. I spoke to Richard Bray, or Count Evander McLaughlin, about his participation in the murder melee. Richard has been a part of the SCA for 30 years, even having been the king of Yaldemir at some point. I asked him about what combat techniques he likes employing when on the battlefield.
So you just participated in the murder melee. How was that?
Awesome. It's always a great fight. We get to play with our friends, and it's a great experience. Well, we try to look at what kind of weapons mix they have. They have long weapons, 6-9 feet weapons, and sometimes we have swords and shields.
Yeah.
So we try to look after, get a good mixture so that we can send our short weapons against our long weapons, or our long weapons against our short weapons, and take advantage of that. There's quite a bit of strategy to it sometimes.
Yeah, right. Because you want to get within the spear, but the spear keeps you away, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But so you have to try, if you're with a sword and shield, you have to get past the spear as fast as you can, because he can get 2 or 3 shots at you before you're even close enough to hit him. I started in the SCA in 1993.
Yeah.
I knew about the SCA from 1986, so a friend of mine in high school got involved. He was a couple of years older. He tried to get me into it, but it wasn't quite the right time. And then when I was living out in Alberta, in Cold Lake, Alberta, they had a demo, and I said, hey, I know this stuff.
Yeah.
I got a friend who does this. They're like, why don't you come out? And I went out, loved it, and I've been doing it ever since. I love it. The camaraderie, the people we know. I've got friends all over the world that I can reach out to at any time. I've called up people that I haven't even known, just called them up and said, hey, I'm coming down to an event in Georgia. Can I crash with you? And they're like, sure, come on. We got lots of space. And meet new people because of that way. So it's a very good, tight-knit group with a lot of good people, very open-minded, very friendly.
In addition to the heavy combat, they had a rapier melee tournament. Rapier melee use real metal weapons as well as spears, as long as those weapons are dulled and their ends are rubbered. The rapier melee is a little less violent, but more technical in its style, which means combatants can wear light or no armor. Rapier melee rules can slightly vary from heavy combat. In some tournaments, combatants can resurrect themselves 3 times, giving them a chance to get back onto the battlefield after they've died. They can also be competing to protect a flag and see who controls the flag for the longest time. They also had throwing weapon stations available, as well as an archery range and archery tournament, which I unfortunately couldn't get footage of. As Robin had mentioned, most SCA members make their own clothes and armor, working hard to make their outfits period accurate. I spoke to Rebecca Woodworth, or Arlette of the Rozaki, about what she does with the SCA and how she utilizes her love of sewing and clothes making into the society.
It's given me access to lots of different hobbies and things that I wouldn't have done on my own.
Yeah.
So I currently have a loom collection, which sounds a little silly, but I think we have 5 or 6 different looms in my house. So I'm doing weaving, and I'm doing spinning and sewing costumes. And previously I've done the combat, which was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And just all sorts of different things that I can spend my time learning about and studying different parts of the history. And because the SCA is so broad, that might change. Right now, that's what I've been focusing on, and I've been looking at extant textiles, trying to get a sense of how people both made the fabric in the time period and then used it to make clothing. And try to get a little closer to what they actually wore.
Gotcha. I'm assuming the outfit that you're in right now is made by you?
It is.
Okay.
This is not one of my most accurate outfits, but
Sure,
it's not
yeah.
bad. It's for campings. Like, they had clothing that worked for the climate that they lived in.
Right.
Very well.
Yeah.
It's a little harder to access the types of fibers and things that they would have had at the time.
I see. Yeah.
So nowadays, if you buy linen, for example, the fiber lengths are not as long in the linen as they would have had. They would have had much longer lengths. The wool that we get now has been processed differently than they would have processed it.
Right.
So unless you're really doing a sheep to shawl project,
Yes.
That's what we call it, when you do shear the sheep, spin the wool, process the fiber. All of the little parts, I haven't done them as one single project. This is not my first murder melee.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of them.
Yeah.
Not as many as some of the people here,
Ah.
but I've been to murder melee probably every year since I was in my early 20s.
In addition to the fighting and camping, vendors open their doors to sell their wares here. I spoke to Tamara Paisley, or Sibylla of Glenmere, about her participation in the SCA, as well as what she's selling at the event. She's the co-owner of ITR Creations, a company that makes homemade tea blends and smith metal items.
So we've been merchants for a very long time. Originally, I owned a tea room, and that's why we bring the teas with us. I have to support my habit. I love tea. I do a lot of the blends myself. My husband is a blacksmith. So when we started this group back in 2007, blacksmithing was already was something he was doing in the backyard. And so then we bought a farm, and we started doing this a little more often, right? So yeah, then we retired, and now we do this all the time. I love the SCA. It's all encompassing. So it gives you a chance to explore all the different avenues of medieval history without actually having to live it, because you get to experiment. And of course, it's an anachronism, so there's leeways that give you room to explore. I actually enjoy all of it, because, you know, when you do all the things, you have a little part of something, you always have something more to do. And I think that's important, is to keep your horizons open.
Before we close out, let's take a look at an unedited melee. This battle was a special 30 versus 30 melee where all the combatants clashed at once.
Gonna be fine. No. Gonna be fine.
Go get down. He's on the side of your head. Fight. I'm
Not like really emphatic. So he's very excited for his birthday.
Yeah, Garrett.
Murder Melee runs every year, weather permitted, starting on Thursday and running until Sunday. Beyond these events mentioned, there are crafts like pottery, stonemasonry, and even piñatas for the kids. Non-SCA members are welcome to come in and join in the non-combat fun, as they can provide you with rental medieval garb to make you feel more at home. If you're interested in joining the SCA, you can go to Ben Dunford's website and tell them you're interested in joining. They welcome any and all, of any age, as long as you got an interest in medieval culture. That's all for now. Back to you, Stephen. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching this season of Hammer D20. This will be it for this season, and I'll hopefully see you in the fall. Have a nice summer, and I'll hope to see you soon.